Hi, I'm Alan Hedblum. Welcome to our show, a place to feel like you belong. As Michigan Governor Rick Snyder has repeated, one of the best ways to jumpstart an economy is to embrace the entrepreneurial spirit of immigrants and international students. Today, we'll talk to two individuals who have a direct understanding of that. Jeff Towns is the Executive Director of Michigan's Global Talent Retention Initiative, and Yasha Nath is a bright university graduate who is transitioning to Michigan's workforce. Jeff, Yasha, welcome to Feel Like You Belong.
Thank you.
Thanks for having us.
You bet, you bet. So, Jeff, tell us a little bit about the genesis of GTRI and its mission.
GTRI was developed as a concept from a study done by Global Detroit back in 2010, 2011. And the Global Detroit study revealed that immigrants contribute significantly to our state's economy, as do international students, bringing about $1.2 billion with them to study.
That's billion with a B.
That's billion with a B.
That's big bucks.
They bring a lot of resources to the state. And so they were looking at the international student population as a driver for the state's economy and our talent and our workforce.
Okay. Okay, and so what is the mission? What are you setting out to do?
The mission of GTRI is to diversify and strengthen the state's economy through the retention of top international talent.
Okay, and why is that necessary in today's marketplace?
Well, as Michigan has been really the only state in the country during the Great Recession to lose population, and has a difficult time retaining many of its domestic students who graduate from our universities. Many of them leave the state, unfortunately. Identifying the global talent pool as a mechanism to support employers in talent and in the growth of their businesses as our economy rebounds, it's very important that we help educate both employers and students about the opportunities.
Sure, okay. So Yasha, I want to ask you, how does a bright graduate from the University of the West Indies end up in the upper Midwest?
Well, my story is a little bit different to the normal student. I took a different path because my husband came here on an H-1B. He was hired as a consultant, so I actually came on an H-4 visa initially, and so I was his spouse, just living with him and so on, and then finally we were looking for universities to do our post-grad education, and we looked at several in the area, and finally settled on Grand Valley State University because it suited our needs, it was close enough to where we lived, that sort of thing, and so that's how we came here.
Okay. Tell us about the training that you did at Grand Valley State.
So at Grand Valley State, I did an MBA and an MSc, a Master's of Science in Business Administration and a Master's of Science in Accounting. And whilst there, I had something called CPT, Curricular Practical Training. I was able to use that CPT during a summer, and I worked with a company called Forcia Automotive. We had a small, tiny little team that worked on designing it's a tier one automotive supplier. So they design seating, they design different things for cars and so on. And so I worked with them. It's in basically the production design department and marketing and such. I did that for about 3 months. Best experience I've ever had.
So how does CPT work?
CPT, if you are a student, you can have access to CPT through your program. Essentially, it has to be part of your curriculum, it has to be approved by the university. Most times it's done on the campus, but you can actually do it off campus if you get approval, if it pertains to your program and so on. And since mine directly related to the business administration, it was marketing, research and so on, I was able to work for 3 months. You can work up to 360 days. As long as you're less than 360 days, then you can still get your OPT, which is what comes after you graduate, which is optional practical training.
Okay.
So,
okay. And then after you did your CPT, Oh, and that's like an internship, really?
Yes, it
for
is.
students. Okay.
It can be.
And is it specifically designated for international students?
It is, yes. It is. If you're on an F1, I think you can still get it. If you're on a J1, you might be able to expatiate on that a little more than I do, but I would. But yes, it's specifically geared towards students who are here internationally, because international students can't work off of campus. You can get employment on campus, you cannot work off of campus unless you go through CPT or OPT.
Yeah.
So.
And some of us need a law degree to understand, immigration law degree to understand those regulations.
Yes.
Sure, sure. So tell us about your OPT, because that actually got you a job with a company outside of Grand Rapids.
Well, I was fortunate enough actually to start my CPT with the same company that I transitioned into for OPT. So while doing the Masters of Science in Accounting, I got an internship with a company called Rua Associates. It's a mergers and acquisitions firm out in Holland, Holland. And I worked with them for about 6 months last year. And then I transitioned into OPT, so this is what I'm currently working on right now with them.
Awesome. So, Jeff, how does GTRI facilitate connections for students? How do you help students get plugged in?
We do a number of different things. We have conducted over the past several years, and most recently in Grand Rapids area, in February, we conduct what's called a Global Futures Conference, where we will invite speakers and subject matter experts in the areas of social media, in the areas of resume development and employment, and help to educate students on the finer points of finding a job and presenting themselves, selling their brand, if you will, to employers in the United States. A lot of students come from different countries that don't have the same kind of cultural mores that we do with regard to employment in the United States. So we try to bring them up to speed on how to go about that process in the country.
It strikes me that the process here in the U.S. is maybe a little bit more rigid. In a lot of countries, it's, who do you know, or maybe your uncle can get you a job or get your foot in the door.
Very much so, and it's driven by resume scanning systems and processes that they might not be familiar with. The importance of making sure that you have a good social media presence on things like LinkedIn and Facebook, that you're presenting the brand that you would want to present to an employer in that way. And then, of course, there are cultures where individuals may not be so comfortable looking someone in the eye, for example, when they're having an interview. So educating international students about these finer points can make a big difference in their ability to land that OPT opportunity or a job in the United States.
Sure.
In Michigan.
So a lot of international students aren't as outgoing as, say, Yasha is here, and if they're bad eye contact looking down, their resume may be great, they may be really bright students, but the American interviewing them will think, I just sense something's wrong, but it's something wrong culturally, not with their
That's
with their
exactly
qualifications.
right. That's exactly right. Yeah.
And that's a great service
Yep.
for them. And how do you go about educating employers?
We do presentations at employer events. We work one-on-one with employers. Oftentimes we'll get referrals from agents with the MEDC that go out and work with employers on their talent problems, and we'll go and visit directly with employers to share with them what the opportunities are and different pathways to securing international and global talent.
Awesome. What inspires you about your job?
Well, sitting right here, it's the the Global Futures Conference, for example. Students they express their deep appreciation for what we do organizationally in kind of advocating on their behalf with employers to help educate them. A lot of employers are very fearful of the immigration process, and so they don't look into it. Our job is to help them get over that hurdle a little bit, so they take that step in that direction.
Because it's easier and more comfortable with hiring American grads because that's what they're used to.
They understand that process, and with international students and immigrants, there's an additional process involved. But in our state, you know, as we strive to find, you know, highly educated and talented individuals, I think employers need to look more deeply into their organizations and their culture of their organizations and start opening up their doors and to global talent, because that's where the world is going.
Yeah. So what would you say to companies that are fearful about hiring somebody like Yasha, who has lots of talent and training? I mean, what's the best case that you could make?
Give me a call, or you know, I'm happy to talk to them about the opportunities. You know, it's like anything. You know, you need to educate yourself about the process rather than avoiding it because you don't know.
Okay. Okay. Good. Yasha, if you were talking to international students who are maybe thinking about staying in the U.S., what would you recommend them to do?
So I went about it from the perspective of, like, it's a threefold perspective. I looked at it academically. You go to the university, you do your academics, you excel as much as you can. Professionally, you attend conferences and such. Attending your conference would help a student to understand what the process is. And then I also did socially. So for me, on campus, I networked a lot with not just students, but professors, career guidance people, that sort of thing. And that's how I was able to get opportunities for myself. When I was at Grand Valley State, I joined the Graduate Student Association, and I took that organization and used it to gain experience, to meet people, to create conferences that I could benefit from and other grad students like myself could benefit from. And so it was really about getting involved, because yes, you're going to face the challenges that he's talking about. I mean, when you speak, and it has been my greatest challenge with getting employment here and getting an H-1 visa, which is the sponsorship for professional students, the professional visa. When I get to my second or my third interview, you know, the employers, they want me, but even the international companies or the global companies, they're not sure of the process. They're afraid of the process. And so one of the things I actually kind of say to employers when I'm speaking to them is, you look at it from a cost perspective. The cost of doing an H-1B is actually lower than the cost of, say, paying a recruitment company. A recruitment company, you might end up paying 15 to 25% of the annual salary to the recruitment company for employing someone. Whereas an H-1, it might be about, what, $6,000 maybe? Sometimes
probably
a little bit,
between 4 and 6.
yeah, a little bit less sometimes, you know, and the green card could be as much as $10,000. So between 4 and 6 for the H-1, and then that buys you 3 to 6 years, and you end up, you know, if you want to do the green card, you're really vested in this person, then you can do the green card, and it's
when you're looking at professionals like Yasha, I mean, it's a small investment, you know, over a longer period of time. So, I mean, that's recouped.
Yeah, great.
So ultimately, it was about getting involved. Every opportunity that I got, when I worked with Forcia Automotive, that was through the campus. It was because I spoke directly with the director of the program, the graduate program director, Claudia Bajama. And then when I got this opportunity with Rua Associates, it was because I entered a competition, the ACG competition, the America for Corporate Growth competition, and knew and met the president of this company. So he knew a little bit about my talent and, you know, how I worked and my knowledge and so on. And so he was very excited to employ me because of that.
It strikes me that the typical university student is not always proactive in terms of seeking out these opportunities. And you said yourself that when you were growing up as a youth, you were pretty reserved, pretty shy. It was painful for you to be out there. So what would you recommend? And we need to wrap up in a second. So just the last word. What would you recommend for slightly shyer students?
There's something called the Toastmasters, which is actually an excellent program for speaking that helped. Participate as much as you can in leadership roles. That helps because then you have to speak constantly to people and you get used to it. I mean, I told you before, I would cry. I was petrified of speaking in public.
Which we would not have guessed right now from.
But speaking in public or standing in front of a classroom, the great thing about the education system in the United States is it encourages you to speak. That's actually one of the things that I liked about the system, which was different to my home country. You're more interactive, you're more application. In Trinidad and Tobago And a lot of the ex-British colonies, you find that the British system is a little bit more literal. It's a little bit more academic driven. You don't really get the application and the ability to speak and talk in class. My first class at Grand Valley State University, I had to speak. I had to speak several times in front of the class, so I had to get used to it.
Yeah.
So.
Well, on behalf of my fellow Michiganders, I want to thank you for coming and bringing your talent to the state, your energy to the state, and wish you best of luck in your career.
Thank you.
And Jeff, continued success with GTRI. You're doing great work, important stuff. So thanks to both of you for coming.
Thank you, Alan.
Thank you.
Yep. And to folks back home, stay tuned. We'll be back in a moment with some tips on American culture, American slang, and a little bit of humor. What language do you speak at work? What language do you speak at home? For millions of immigrants to the U.S., the answer changes as they move from public life to private life. When we're in the marketplace as sellers or consumers, we probably conduct a lot of our business in English. But at the end of the day, when second language speakers want to kick off their shoes, they probably go back to their native language. For most of us, our mother tongue means familiarity. Home is where we're comfortable. It's where we express feelings, not discuss spreadsheets. We talk about Tio Jorge's birthday party, or chubby-cheeked children, or whether the baba ganoush has too much lemon in it. Now, there are some Americans who don't like it when they hear Korean or Punjabi or Spanish being spoken in public. Their typical response is, "This is America, speak American." Of course, this is funny because American isn't a language. What we speak here is called English. Those same people have tried over the decades to have English named the official language of the United States. They've tried passing a variety of laws to restrict what people speak in this country or what language services are available in this country. Each group is called something a little different, and they claim they have slightly different goals. They're called English only, U.S. English, official English. The trouble is, many of these people are monolingual folks who don't understand the difficulty of learning a second language, and they want everyone to talk like them, without the understanding that speaking many languages is the natural way of doing business across the world. We need to promote multilingualism, not discourage it. Usually these English-only or official English folks claim they want to unify the country under one language, but how unifying is it to be told how you should communicate? The fact is that living in the United States means needing to make some attempt at learning the English language to get along. In other words, it's a natural consequence of adaptation, but it doesn't need to be a law. It's interesting that these same people don't want the government to tell them what to do in other areas of their life. They call it intrusion or big government. Sometimes they think it will save money because they can get rid of interpreters in courtrooms or hospitals. Let me ask you something. If you were traveling to another country and had to have surgery or go on trial, wouldn't you want to understand in your own language what was happening to you? In an advanced country, that is my expectation of how the system should work. Of course, the longer that immigrants live in the U.S., the better their English will usually become. Eventually, they may not need so much help. But what about the 75-year-old grandmother who moves to the U.S. from India because her granddaughter just opened a business? To be a good citizen and vote responsibly on ballot proposals like senior housing or school millages, they may need some help, unless you believe in a country that requires literacy tests for voting rights, which we outlawed in the 1960s. And finally, do you remember taking French or Spanish in high school? Was it hard for you? Maybe you quit after 2 years. Well, guess what? Just because you are not good at language learning doesn't mean that you're a bad citizen. It just means you stink at language learning. I know you have lots of other skills you bring to your neighborhood or your workplace. For Americans who grumble about those people speaking funny languages instead of English, I say let them alone. If younger immigrants want to get ahead, let's let the marketplace determine how they adapt to American English and culture, and not our own xenophobia.
Ha ha ha!